And it's funny because one of my friends who's a massage therapist who's wonderful, she said there's this mantra that you can use that Louise Hay, I think, created, that's hip, hip, hooray. I find joy in every day, because our hips are kind of like the basement of the house. And we tend to store a lot of like heaviness there sometimes, or like the junk, the things that we're not really processing. And so I feel like when we go into pigeon and ankle to knee or cow face pose, and we really get into those deep hip openers, it's a really nice release. It's like somatic in nature. Our issues are in our tissues. And when we can start to release it is when all of that lightness comes into place. But just even thinking about how our hips, for women carry so much, whether you've had kids or not, you've menstruated, maybe everyone's going to go through menopause at some point. There's so much I think held in the hips for women. So it's really interesting to kind of dive into how it's connected psychologically as well.
And I feel like we're sitting so much.
Yes.
And to me, I think sitting, driving, the physical position you're in to drive, but then the stress of driving.
Yes.
Sometimes driving can be stressful. For some of us who drive the country roads in Walland, it's not as stressful. But I think just even that, I feel like my hips get tighter and tighter just sitting.
That's the funny thing too about the hips, is they can get tight from no movement and tight from movement, right? If you're exercising a lot, your hips are tight. But if you're not moving, your hips can also get stiff and tight. I was talking to Tristan on the horseback riding yesterday, which I absolutely loved. She was talking about anxiety. And I think of anxiety a lot of times as being a future thing where you're kind of nervous about the what ifs, what's going to happen in the future. And we talk about the front body in yoga being our Eastern hemisphere or moving towards the future. And then the back body is our Western hemisphere. Like Paschimottanasana is seated forward fold. And the translation is extreme bend of the Western hemisphere. So a lot of times people go into a forward bend and they might start crying because our emotions in the past are what we're opening up when we fold forward. And when we go into those big back bends, it's like we're moving into the future. And that can be anxiety producing, but the forward folds can be kind of depressing, right? Because you're in the memories. And so it's interesting just to think about how we can use our body to explore all these things physically and mentally. They're not that it replaces talk therapy or mental therapy if you need all of that, but I feel like the two together are so connected that you can't do one without the other. You almost need them both, or they're better with each other. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Well, I also feel like for me, just the opening poses of yoga are so important because so much of our life is kind of leaning forward. It's like driving a car. It's,
and I need to sit up.
It's holding a phone with my head down or, sitting on an airplane. And every time I go to yoga and we're just opening up the chest, so I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to do this more every day.
Yes. And my one, Peter Rizzo, my one yoga teacher, I loved him. He'd always say that backbends are the antidepressants of yoga because, again, to your point, we're not rounded forward and we're open and we're present. And yes.
And you just feel
good.
Better open.
You can breathe better.
Yeah.
Very true. And that's all connected as well. The other thing, too, I said a lot of times with anxiety, it's just that you're not taking full breaths, right? They're shorter, shallow breaths. And that causes anxiety just from the way we breathe.